So, what comes to mind when you think of motorcycles? Some people think of biker gangs, others maybe accidents, while still other people may think of the wind in their hair and the freedom of the open road, like I used to with my old '69 Yamaha street bike. Today's guest has a few thoughts on this as well. Tim Riter is a pastor and teacher and author of the book God, a Motorcycle, and the Open Road. Welcome to Bridge City News, Tim.
Thank you so much, Al. It's good to be with you guys. I wish I were up there in person.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have you here. Now, Tim, you've done a bit of riding over your last 48 years, 240,000 miles, 46 states, 3 countries. Out of all of this, you wrote a book. So what kind of adventures can we look forward to reading in this book?
Ooh, a huge variety. We've got 50 different chapters. Each chapter is about 1,000 words, and a third of that is a story about biking. And then the rest talks about what lessons we can learn about life and God from that story. Things like walking into a bar and getting scared to death, being roused by a cop in a park in Groton, Connecticut, being chased for probably 20 miles by a mad motorist.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, when you ask people why they enjoy riding, a common answer is, well, it's the freedom and adventure. Now, do you think there is something that the Creator really instilled within us, why we enjoy riding so much?
I think so. I need mountain and outside fixes regularly. And I think the reason for that, you see God much more clearly in nature. And when I'm up in the mountains, like that road from Banff up to Jasper, it just absolutely astounded me. Or the going to the Sun Highway in Glacier. You see God, and you're not in this protective steel cage. You're right out in the midst of it. You get all the aromas, the sights, 360 degrees of being able to see God's glory. When we're in the city, we see man's production. When we're on a bike out in the woods in the wilderness, we see God's. And I prefer the latter.
Now, my first set of wheels, as I mentioned, was an old Yamaha street bike. I used to take it from my hometown of Calgary to McKay's Ice Cream, 52 flavors in Cochrane, Alberta. It was a lot of fun, an amazing time. And yeah, I did spill a little bit on myself. Now, how and why did you get into riding a bike?
You know, it's looking back, it had to be a God thing. Before my senior year in college, that a neighbor had his little Honda Trail 90 for his kids. So he had to go pick them up. And he said, Tim, you want to come along? And it was a boring day, so I did. And Hal pushed and pushed to get me to ride the bike. It was a big dirt track. I had no interest whatsoever. Finally, just getting to shut up. I said, okay, I didn't know how to shift or anything. I got back and said, well, did you shift? I said, oh, yeah, of course I did. No idea what to do. And it was okay. It was nice with the wind in my face. And then the next year, we're in the midst of finals week. And we went out to see Easy Rider. It was 1970. And we were going to take a trip to Canada. One of my senior year roommate, another roommate had moved up to Canada in Kamloops. We're going to go see Ron and work for a TV station there. It turned out that Mark ran out of money and I got in an accident in my car. And then we saw Easy Rider. And I thought, I like that. That looks like that freedom of the open road. You're in the midst of nature. And so I saved a little bit of money, bought a 350 Honda Scrambler, blue, and took that to Canada. Month-long trip. And that absolutely hooked me. It changed the course of my life. I don't think that ride around the dirt field on Little Trail 90 would have ever done it. But seeing Easy Rider got me into the trip. And that trip was transformative to see God's glory. What's ironic, I wasn't a follower at that point. I grew up in church, got away. And this is that time of searching. It was about 5 months after that trip that I finally came back to God. And that trip on the bike played a key role.
Now, in your opening chapter, you quote Psalms 45, 3 through 4. Ride majestically, ride triumphantly, ride on the side of truth. Why did you choose that?
A friend of mine gave me that verse. He's from the outside of Calgary, Murray Pura. He's a pastor and author and a neat guy. And I love the last part about ride on the side of truth. Here's one of the stories from the chapter. I was living in Taos, New Mexico then. A friend in West Lafayette, Indiana was getting married. So I rode the bike out and I was coming back across the Kansas plains, wide open. And I pulled up and passed this car with a girl and a lady driver and a couple of daughters in it. And she was being followed by 2 guys, maybe 3 guys in the car. She looked scared to death. So I pulled ahead and just waited, stayed close. Uh, they would let her pull ahead and then pull ahead. She pulled into a gas or to a rest area, thinking that they stopped, waited, she came out. Finally, she pulled off to the side of the road. And I'm not a big hero. I'm not a mixed martial arts type guy, but I couldn't not do anything. So they had stopped. The guy started getting out of his bike, out of his car. I stopped the bike. I threw my leg over. I'm this long-haired hippie biker, and it looks like a chopped bike. It was a stock 750 Honda extended front end with like an Easy Rider paint job, kind of like this. And these guys saw this long-haired biker get off. They jumped back in their car, spun, did a 180 across the dirt median, and were never seen again. So I think we need to, whenever we can as followers of God, do we can to support people, especially those that are more vulnerable than she was. And I didn't want to scare her even more, so I stayed in the bike, let her pass me, and she gave this nice little appreciative wave. Never saw her again. Never saw the guys never followed her, at least at that point.
By the way, that helmet reminded me a little bit of Evel Knievel. Now, what lessons does your book have for those who do not ride motorbikes?
A couple of them. One of the things I found that people who have friends or family members that ride are loving it. They get an insight into what thrills them, what their loved one enjoys about it. A lot of them are being given as gifts to those people. But I think the key is there's an entrancement with motorcycles that permeates a lot of people if you don't ride. A lot are scared to ride. They've kind of toyed with the idea, but they just never have. And it gives them an insight into what it means to be out in the middle of God's glory, in his creation, and what the people they know and love think and love.
Now, you said in a big trip in 1974 was to find America. What did you discover during that trip?
A lot of things. I discovered that Americans were much better than I ever thought. This is the height of Watergate. The Vietnam War was still going on. It was a country in turmoil. Cities were burning with race riots. And I was kind of a little bit scared taking a bike that was painted like the Easy Rider bike across the country. I went to the South. And I remember what happened to two guys in Easy Rider at the end. It wasn't good. And I discovered people were so helpful. I had one couple outside of Boston invite me to stay in their house for a couple of days and tour. That he leaves work the next morning. His wife and 5-year-old son are there all alone with this long-haired hippie biker. Totally astounded me. I found the biggest problems I had were from law enforcement who didn't trust motorcyclists. It was right at, like I said, Watergate was coming to a peak, and I went into the Rhode Island State Capitol. That was the first colony to have full religious freedom, and you could see the charter signed by the King of England. I'm a history geek. I was a history major at Pepperdine, and I missed the last tour of the day. And I'm kind of complaining to the guy in Moding. I said, I'm a history guy. I'm a school teacher. I really want to see it. Well, I'll tell you what, wait till the tour's over. I'll give you a special trip back. So he took me back into the room where they put it away. There's a teletype machine. And as I'm reading it, the teletype goes off. Nixon was scheduling a speech for that night. He'd called Vice President Ford back to Washington. The word he was going to resign. And I saw the American system worked. It's that grand experiment in democracy, which had never been done at that level before, not even in Rome and the Greek city-states. It was working. And so it was a combination of the system worked, the people worked. I had so many invite me into their homes to stay. You pull up to a rest area and you've got your gear packed, and this is more back in the 70s, but even still today, people talk if you're on a bike. If you're in a car, they ignore you. You're one of a million. They see you in the bike and say, hey, where are you from? Where are you heading?
Did you ever stay at many of those KOA campgrounds? I did a few of those trips myself.
I did. Most of the time, I just find a place. I just graduated from college. Well, I was teaching at that point at a small Christian school, didn't pay a lot, so I was saving money. And I wouldn't even go KOA most of the time. I'd find a little place on a little bitty side road where nobody could see me. Sometimes in a rest area, every so often I get a hotel room. And stayed with family and friends. Probably out of the 60 days on the road, probably 10 were under a roof.
Now, Tim, you've been riding for close to 50 years. What frightened you the most over these years of riding? Any nasty spills?
Yeah, I've been fortunate on that. The only time I went down, I had a bad back. I put a brand new tire in the back, and I'm going around a corner that wasn't even full 90, just 135. And so I went down, I was going like maybe 5 miles an hour, didn't get hurt. But the scariest, on that night that Nixon was resigning, I pulled into Groton, Connecticut, and it was either get a hotel room with a TV or go to a bar. Being a poor teacher, chose the bar, walked in a place called the Grotto. And as you walked in, there's a hallway going down both sides. And being right-handed, I just got a natural turn to the right. It was really dark. Walked around the wall where it opened up into the bar, kind of a redneck bar, the place that a long-haired hippie biker would not want to stay. So I turned around, and just as I turned around there, another guy turned around at the opposite end. And you can't look a guy in the eye because that's a challenge. So I just kind of kept my head down, keep an eye on where he was. And I moved off to my left, and he moved to his right in front of me. I moved to my right, and he moved to his left. And I'm thinking, Tim, you are going to get the holy snot beat out of you here. This is one guy. He looks kind of bulky. He's got all of his friends in there. So I thought I better make peace. So I said, hey, I don't want any trouble. And this guy raised his hands. It was a mirror. It was my own reflection that scared me half to death.
That's incredible. Now, you do both solo rides and group rides. What are the pros and cons of riding solo?
Solo, you've got more freedom, more individuality. You can go wherever you want. There's 4 or 5 of us that take a big trip every year. And where we go is kind of a group consensus. You figure it out. I love to fish. So on the solo trips, if I'm near a trout stream, I can throw in. These guys aren't fishermen, so I've passed some beautiful trout streams and rivers, and I've just got to pass them. So solo, you've got that freedom to choose your path, a little bit more time to meditate and ponder. Benefits of going together, if anything goes wrong, you've got help there. But also the fellowship, the companionship. We've got a group of guys, we call ourselves the Gray Hogs. Gray because we're old, hogs because we eat too much, not because we ride Harleys. And it's a delightful time. That last year we went up to Canada, almost to Jasper. This year we're going to Oregon, Washington. I may, on my own, do a solo part going up. There's a little town in Alaska, Riter. It's the southernmost town you can reach by road. And some bikers from Pennsylvania, we were in North Dakota last year, told me about it. So I may go shooting on up to Prince George, then over to Riter and bag. That'll be state number 47 on the bucket list of 50 states on 2 wheels.
Now, your book, which is called God, a Motorcycle in the Open Road, also talks about a time when you think angels helped you out. Tell me a bit about that.
That was also in Canada. I love that country. I was coming down from Banff on the road to Radium Hot Springs, and I'm not smart enough to convert it to kilometers, but I was doing about 60 miles per hour, and the sign said 35, so this long sweeping turn to the right. And doing 60 at a 35 zone isn't bad on a bike. However, there were 2 of us on the bike, and all of our gear was in a duffel bag up high. And we're going about halfway into it, and all of a sudden, the rear wheel locks totally. Apparently, the chain had come loose, locked the entire wheel, and all the laws of physics said I should go down. And I've only been riding about a month and a half. I didn't know enough. And I'm convinced to this day, a couple of angels, or maybe an entire squadron, I didn't see them, but I wasn't good enough to save us. We just kept skidding around the corner. I finally pulled into a straight line. Took a couple of hours to get the bike fixed. We did. But that was one of the factors that showed me the reality of a spiritual world. And that was a key part of coming to Christ like about 5 months later.
Yeah, it's a miracle, absolutely. Now, Tim, motorbikes can be very dangerous. What safety advice do you have for our viewers who ride, or maybe the drivers of other vehicles who are around motorbikes?
I had just started, and a guy that had ridden quite a bit, in fact, he had fixed one of my bikes for me, put together. He said, look on every car as intentionally out to get you. And always leave a buffer, leave some space. If they come after you, you can get away a little bit. It's become since then instinctive, and it's good advice on a car. The best advice if we want to stay safe in a bike is never get on one. They are inherently more dangerous, there's no doubt on that. But the benefits they bring to some of us are well worth it.
You know, it's interesting. I had the pleasure of interviewing a gentleman that owned a Harley dealership in Calgary, Southern Alberta, Harley Davidson. And he says to me, Hal, when these bikes come from the factory, they're quiet. We put on the aftermarket mufflers to make them loud. So we let people know, the drivers know around, that we're there. It's for our own safety. We do that most of the time. I thought, isn't it about the image for Harley? He says, no, it's more about our safety. So you know there's a motorbike there. So you're always aware. I found that was very interesting. So what advice would you give to new riders?
Go to a safety course, learn how to ride, take some time, start on a smaller bike. That one of the stats is that this has been for a long time. There are 3 factors that lead to fatal accidents on a bike. If you're under 21, if you're on a super bike, or on any bike for the first 6 months. So if you've got all 3 of those factors, it's pretty dangerous. So you start small. You don't get the big bike that's too much for you to handle. And get to know it. Take a safety course. Once you get to know that bike, bump it up a little bit. I'm just selling my Honda ST1300 now. Just bought a Goldwing. I'm finding as I get older, I love the comfort. And the ST is tempting me to go faster than I should, as fast as I used to. So you've got to push a little bit, but if you push too much, you die. So another piece of advice would be listen to your head, not just your heart.
And no more choppers.
There's a place for them. I love the looks of them. The second bike was the 750 that was semi-chopped. I would love to get one of those American chopper bikes for around town. They're not that comfortable on a long road, that they bounce more. When you've got the long extension of the front end, turning is a real pain. But dang, they look good. They are gorgeous vehicles.
Tim Riter, author of God, A Motorcycle in the Open Road. Thanks a lot for joining us today from California.
Al, I really appreciate it. And if you ever get another bike, let me know and we'll take a ride when I get up to Canada next time.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Tim. On behalf of all of us here at PCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.